Namaste, Galactic family, and welcome back to my channel, Indigo Angel. Come on into this dimension, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you can continue to receive my messages. Be sure to like, comment, and share this video so others can find out about my work. And today we are going to dive into some of Mu and the motherlands and Lemuria's history, given that it is pertaining directly to the Australian grids at this time, and how this timeline in humanity's history has been an unseen driving force to what we see playing out in Australia as we speak. And of course, globally to the rest of the world. This is global history. This is impacting every part of the world. And what we are seeing here is an artificial purge in the timelines that are being used to repeat the traumatic events that played out in Lemuria. This is really a highly unseen spiritual battle that is taking place, which is why I have stated a lot that Lemuria's history right now must be known at this time, that it is vital in this next phase of our global spiritual healing and transformation, which must be reconnected to the land of Mu and the Lemurian timeline, basically to salvage the diabolical digression that has been placed on our feminine God technology on this earth. And not just that, on the star seeds, on the indigos, on the crystal children, on those that are connected to the organic aspect of themselves, those that are denying the Jim Jones juice, those that believe in sovereignty, those that actually have souls inside of their bodies, actual universal trees of life that integrate according to light and sound frequency. We are alive. Those that cry for animals, those that love and protect children, things like this, right? All of this really energy from Mu. It expands from the Stargate portals in the hourglass geometrics. It expands from the conscious crystal grid networks that I'm going to show you today in this update. I'm going to pull up my map. And it also expands and extends from the gas lines. You'll notice that a lot of these Stargate locations in the conscious crystal grid networks, which is the organic grid that emanates from the consciousness body of Mu. This consciousness flows through the gas lines. You'll notice that a lot of these locations are mountain peak points in the grids, high peaks, and the majority of the gas lines actually flow through the mountain ridges. And this is kind of one way in which this crystal grid communication system is happening on the earth. But what we're seeing right now down in AU, because, we're still very much, or I'm still very much, and I know many of you are still very much connected to what's going on there as we speak, also keeping an eye on everything going on globally. But what we're seeing here is part of this purge that is now being exemplified in the land of Oz, where the heart-based frequency is highest to the Lemurian encoding. This is where the crystal seeds to the original earth seeders are located in the core living light fields in a subatomic quantum state in Uluru. Okay. This seems to be purges of artificial timelines, polarity timelines, running the dark occult webs, the Saturnian matrices, the planetary branding, the Draco Anu hybrid systems. And what we're also seeing is a deep removal of clones at this time, which they are also doing down in Australia at the Pine Gap Area 52. And just a quick intel that came in regarding those earthquakes that hit down in Melbourne. Essentially, I was going through some of my messages, and I seen that there are actual Saturnian hexagram branding that's being done down in Antarctica. And what's coming up now is stating that that earthquake was actually a misfiring or a mishap that happened from Antarctica, that it was experimentation that they're doing down in Antarctica, that comes along with deep sciences that are trying to basically decode particles, kind of similar to what's happening at CERN. They have bases down in Antarctica, and that what initiated that earthquake was a firing off from one of these bases or systems down in a hexagram branding system and station that they have, Saturnian station that they have down in Antarctica. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that this is where this was initiated from. This also may have something to do with the glitches on Facebook and Instagram yesterday. So some of you may have seen that the sites were down for, I think, about 6 hours it was. There's a massive clone purging that's happening through the social media networks at this time. These are all agendas that I am seeing may now be in place to really counterattack the attacks on the empty seaters and the cyborgs. So these are basically like unseen dark warfares, wars within the wars, and the unseen matrices that are playing out, like I said, on clones, empty seaters, cyborgs. These are karmic retributions that are playing out, which is really, as a whole, affecting us all to push us higher into our evolution, higher into the higher timelines of humanity. A lot of false holograms that are being cleared out that really are highlighting the Hydra versus Draco wars. And so I just want to let you guys know this message today has highly come through Hydra transmissions. As many of you know, I am an ambassador of this nation. Hydra carries the wounds and memory to the destruction of the mother principle, which I have been highlighting in several of my Hydra updates and transmissions. But this all ties into Mu. This all ties into Lemuria, as Hydra carries the recollection to the first genocidal missions on this earth as a celestial radio template. If you're to tune into this system, this is what you're going to tune into. And within all of those genocidal missions on this earth, Hydra carries that recollection, but also carries the mission to clear out the distorted victor's perspective from the book of Revelation, right? Through Tiamat, through the Black Mother principles, through Ashleisha, through Hydrobius and Alphard systems. And so there is a reason for this rebirthing of this consciousness, and this does tie into Australia. It deeply ties into the history, which I'm going to get in and fully explain to you guys in this update. But essentially, these wars overall are over domination and control of this earth, and also over the ascension programs that are running in the earth's field in the human celestial genetic biology, the spiritual warfare over who is able to captivate the minds and hearts over ascension, right? Who are you ascending with? Okay, are you ascending with the Elohim? Are you ascending with the Melchizedeks? Are you ascending with the Seraphim? Are you ascending with the Christed God principles, all of these things, right? There are warfares within warfares that are basically fighting over these belief templates on a spiritual level as well. And that's really fundamentally at the core of that Hydra versus Draco warfare, right? The whole concept here is to unify these principles, but it does require us really breaking down this history to understand it more. So let's get into Mu here. Here's a picture of the motherland. This is from the Books of the Golden Age by James Churchward. And I will leave links in the description to his books so that way you can reference a lot of these things that I'm going to be talking about today. But essentially, Mu is the true cradle of humanity. Mu is essentially a grid network. Okay, this is and when I say this is a grid network, this is still in a cellular form, okay, at the bottom of the Pacific. Now, the Pacific is constantly re-cleansing, re-absorbing as the plate tectonics actually move into and underneath the volcanic activity of the ridges of the continental shelf. So, does this landmass actually still exist at the bottom of the Pacific? I could not tell you that. It could be that this land mass was pulled into that process of the Ouroboros, of the snake body of the earth, constantly consuming itself over and over again. This is the purification system. And so it may have been reabsorbed and reintegrated back into the structures in the mantle, into the crust, into the race morphogenetic field, into the agartha, okay, and may be existing now inside of agartha. But essentially, this grid is the most extensive and most important running grid known on the earth that cultivates in our most primal sustaining parts of history. So it's very magical and empowering and mythical. It's the unseen grid that runs the oceanic principles, with Australia very much being and embodied within the oceanic principles. And this is beyond any limitation of any other collective grid and radial root race overlays, or just other continental grid systems that exist, because this grid is the defining underlay. It is the unseen and the forgotten. It's the collective, it really runs and operates the collective subconscious shared experience of those that consider themselves to be ancient, immortal, eternal, reincarnated, indigo, starseed, crystal child, Terran souls, okay? Even Melchizedek hybrids and things like this, okay? You can't forget this because it truly represents the cradle of civilization. And it is unified through the old and still running equatorial codes of Lemuria, Gondwana, the supercontinent Pangaea, Kumari Kandam, which I was trying to say the other day on my last show that I did, and I couldn't get the words out. So I'll go ahead and switch to the picture of Kumari Kandam. So Kumari Kandam was the connecting land bridges that brought forth Mu, that was brought forth as an aspect of Mu. It really was Lemuria. So this was kind of one of the actual land bridges of Lemuria that connected Australia to the southern tip of India, and also to Madagascar. And so these bridges are what really brought forth the seven ancient races of Lemuria to life and interconnected all of these tribes here. Another reason why this is also so unseen is that it actually operates off of a different equatorial tilt that simultaneously still exists with this tilt today. Similarly to how in ancient times, we had a different North Pole star. And essentially, with that, we had a different philosophy that was anchored into our cosmic identities and who we were here at this time on this earth. While the equatorial plane that Lemuria existed off of also did the same because the Earth's axis was tilted at a different degree. And so all of these systems that have fallen and sunken were a part of that different equatorial tilt degree. Okay, but it still exists in the planetary body's Akashic memory, in that planetary Akashic field. So, yes, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to Mu really quick. So, Mu, the motherland, this was a highly enlightened civilization that existed over 50,000 years ago. What I'm coming to see is that it probably actually existed over 200,000 years ago and sunk in the Pacific Ocean. It's said that Mu was populated in its glory with about 64 million human beings. Okay, could you imagine 64 million human beings existing 200,000 years ago? I mean, it was considered to be a great an amazing, highly revered, highly spiritual civilization. This existed prior to Lemuria and Atlantis. And my hunch is that it's also an obscured perspective of Pangaea, that these timelines of Pangaea and landmass memory to Pangaea are highly encoded with Mu. Okay. What's left of Mu today is, you can see here in the picture, we have Hawaii, Easter Islands, Fiji, Tahiti, Samoa, and some other places here, some other islands. But these are the actual remnants of Mu, what is left. Mu supposedly sunk very slowly. It was a very slow sinking. So they just kept sinking further and further down into the Pacific Ocean. And what is left here on these islands and the people that exist here, the tribes that exist here, are very they are descendants of Mu, essentially. And given it seems to play a part in history that was actually prior to the Great Pleiadian seeding. Okay, so if you look at Aboriginal Australians' traditions, their galactic traditions of incarnation and galactic races that have been involved, you'll find that they talk a lot about the Pleiadians and how the Pleiadians seeded into the human 24 chromosomes. They were, which provided the purity of the 23rd strand of the DNA. Okay, and so this represented the core essence of the Lemurian celestial blueprint. So the Pleiadians came later after Mu. Okay, they came after Mu had sank, and they embodied in the Lemurian culture. This is considered the beginning of the spiritual core of the human being. And I'd say the 200,000-year-old time frame of when Mu sank, this is about the closest to accuracy that I personally have found. And this is what feels to be resonantly true within me. And again, there's no way for me to really prove or disprove this information. So you want to just, go with your own gnosis today as we kind of move along through this. So many of you probably already know that humans come along during this time in the earth, during the time of Mu. And, if you're not following the fake scientific narratives, essentially celestial and galactic civilization and wars, though, had been playing out for hundreds of thousands of years, billions and millions of years prior to the appearance of man here. So when Mu sunk, the refugees basically became the Lemurians. And so they sought other lands, such as North and South America. The native Indians of North America were the Lemurians. And this brings my attention greatly to the Serpent Mounds, right? Being this coming through Hydra transmissions. This Serpent Mound effigy, the original Earth builders, the earthworks. Okay, I was there this last summer solstice. It was amazing. It was very meteorite type energy with all of the alchemical energies that you felt there. And it was very profound, but I got this really deep calling and this deep sense that this effigy here was to provide us with the origins of our creation. Okay. This came from the Lemurians. Also Mount Shasta, all of the, western coast of North America. This is how, the indigenous Americans were displaced here to this continent. They also, I mean, if you've always wondered that throughout history, like where did the Native Americans came from? They came from Mu. And they also were in places like the Yucatan, right? So the Mayans, this was a great Lemurian civilization. They also were refugees to Asia and also Australia. Okay, so the Aboriginal Australians, the Anangus, the 4D Taran incarnates, these are the Pleiadian incarnates. This is where the Pleiadians seated, was in the heart of the Anangus. And they also continued, they stayed inhabited in Hawaii and Easter Islands, Rapa Nui, basically all of these islands left over from the sinking of Mu. So then, as you know, fast forward into history, you may know that Lemuria and certain aspects of it were then destroyed from great geological upheavals. Okay, so going back to Kumari Kandam, again, it's said to have held the 7 ancient races of Lemuria, all serpent cults, okay, all Hydra bodies, the Indus Valley, who brought over the Necals. Okay, so the Necal people, these were the original Mu people. Also the Dravidian cultures, the Tamil civilization. These are all the true descendants of Mu and Lemuria from Kumar Kandam. And all of this actually predates Sumeria by about 3,000 years. So you can call the Anunnaki really the Anunnaki. So all of these ancient Lemurian civilizations are rooted as serpent cults. And I have highlighted this now in a couple of my previous videos that I have done. So I will leave links in the description to these videos because I really actually go into it a lot more extensively. And I highly recommend watching some of the Hydra videos and Hydra transmissions that I've put out in the past, because I really kind of, go into the interconnectedness of all of this. Now, what's really pertaining to the AU grids right now and kind of what's being cleared out is it's like the grids are trying to reconnect the purity of the ancient crystal grid networks. Okay, they're trying to link back into the lands of Mu, and they're trying to regenerate from these core spiritual essences and energies and tribes of the ancient worlds. So why it's pertaining to the AU grids is some parts of Lemuria that were destroyed from nuclear warfare between wars from the Hydras versus the Dracos, okay, the serpent versus the dragon, the Anunnaki hybrids. Basically, it's just kind of stating Atlanteans versus Lemurians. This is not classifying all of the diversification of beings and different types of bloodlines and stuff that were present in Atlantis, because there was a high extensive amount of genetic diversity here. But I'm speaking of the celestial warfare that kind of one way you can kind of see it. You can kind of see the Lemurians as the Hydra Pleiadians. And the Pleiadians aren't going to really like that I'm, attaching the Hydra nation to that. But I'm going to further explain to you guys why I see this to be very, very true. You can also see the Atlanteans as the Dracu Anu hybrids. This is where, they really shined historically. It really was the dark priest of this time. Now, there were dark priests in Lemuria as well. But it was during the time of these great transitions that really brought forth the dark technology on the earth, the DNA modification, the mind control programs, the false timelines, the psycho-spiritual warfare tactics, the crucifixion, implants, the beast machines, enforced by the Greys. These, this was kind of when a lot of this went down. This is when the nuclear warfare went down. And why this pertains to AU is because I do feel that these wars happened in the lands of Australia. I've talked about the land being scorched and literally looking like nuclear warfare took place. There was even a great Cassiopean War that laid its eyes on the heart of Mu at one point in time. I've only heard about these great Cassiopean Wars. I don't have a lot of details on these. I know these are far before in celestial history anything that even transpired before any warfares in Orion even took place. Wars that I have yet to fully decode, but the Cassiopean Wars does just keep coming up. So if any of you happen to have any information on the Cassiopean Wars, please just drop those down in the comments. Now, I'm going to switch over to my map. Now, on my map here, so Australia is really one of those locations still existing today, like I said, that I feel was the nuclear warfare grounds when the Atlanteans decided to invade the Lemurians. During the time of Atlantis, this grid became harmful. It became hijacked, really due to ascended egos and the forefathers of patriarchy and the hybridized races that, function with the negative agendas, that attempted to bury the remnants of the Lemurians, through, amnesic technologies, again, DNA manipulation, disabling the second, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the 10th strand of the DNA, placing grid seals in the unconsciousness of humanity. During this time, there were such thing as a Lemurian Holocaust, and it was a nuclear war that took place. There was forced breeding programs that took place. I've spoke about these a little bit in other updates. Sterilization programs that took place. A little bit of what we're seeing now today with the James Jones juice and their desire to control, again, instill the genetic warfare to manipulate the genes and the DNA and the RNA. Also, the core of the mother wounds were formed here in the 9th density fields. And this was done through hijacking of the Hydra systems, the demonized Hydra systems. They were all tampered with. Their identities were literally stolen and slapped with new faces. A lot of this warfare and wounding took place on Australia. Okay, so this is why I'm just saying this is imperative to get this history, to get this information. Understanding what has happened will allow us to acknowledge it. Okay, it's all about healing our planetary Akashic history. We can't heal traumas unless we can see them. And that is what the Vatican seals have worked so hard in our biology to try to distort. That is what the James Jones juice is about. The more that they can affect and attack and sterilize your reproductive system, place seals in your reproductive system so they can pass these traumas on to the unborn to continue to allow their systems to stay in place. Okay, so I'm going to dive in a little bit into some of James Churchward's books here. I was able to access this information to take me back a little bit further than Lemuria. I do highly recommend, if you're interested in reading The Lost Continent of Mu by James Churchward. Like I said, I'll leave page numbers in the description. Also, he has it's called the second book of The Cosmic Forces of Mu as well. He talks a lot about those gas lines that are running through the mountain systems. But essentially, all of that will be for you to reference here in the description. Now, focusing on Mu again. Mu, the true cradle of humanity, right? That being here in our great Pacific Ocean. Okay. Like I said, guys, there's a reason why they don't center our maps here. They want to, really pull our consciousness away from what was once there. But basically, James Churchward decoded what is called the Necal Tablets. And the Necal Tablets, the Necals themselves were direct descendants from the continent of Mu. They left hieroglyphic tablets that were brought to India through the trade routes of Kumari Kandam. And these Necal tablets were written in Naga symbols from the motherland. So Hydra symbols. Okay, that's what the concentric circle is all about. And you can actually see it as you tune into some of these locations on the map, which are all nodal points in the conscious crystal grid matrix. Some of them have concentric circle formations similar to the Eye of Sahara next to them. So I'll see if I can zoom into those in just a minute and show you. Well, it's going to take me a while to find it, but there were some systems that had the Naga symbols encoded in the land right next to the mountaintop. So when I come across that again, I will show it to you. But these are some of the oldest, the Necal tablets. These are some of the oldest known tablets to ever exist, holding humanity's true origin and creation stories in Mu. So in these Necal tablets from Mu, we find a lot of things. We find the true location of Adam and Eve. Okay, let me see if I can find a picture of these Necal tablets. Okay, so something like this. Okay, you can see here. Okay, so in these Necal tablets, we find the true location of Adam and Eve. We find the account of creation talking about the four cosmic forces, something we have only really looked at the Mayans for. Regarding galactic synchronization, the Mayans being a very powerful Lemurian civilization, they seem to have really understood the four cosmic forces. In these tablets, we find the true origin of sciences pertaining to our universal tree of life, which we felt, originally came from Kabbalistic Jewish mysticism, but really this goes way back to Mu. But, ultimately was taken. Everything has been taken from Mu and has been slapped with a new identity, essentially. It was taken by the Nazis, the one we cannot see. And they basically, with the four cosmic forces, they took this technology and they sealed this in the North magnetic field as a dark occult force planetarily and branded in the South Pole. Okay. Right now, the South Pole grids are dark grids right now. There's a lot going on in the unseen and the unconscious there, and darkness is being allowed to grow in this unseen realm here. The Necal tablets also talk about the creation of woman. Okay, the actual creation story of woman, something that has been completely taken, removed, ultimately eradicated off the earth due to the Draco Anunnaki's presence here on this earth, which ultimately came thousands of years later after the destruction of Mu. If you get into some of these Pleiadian accounts of creation, especially with the seven sisters, they say that it was man who was here on this earth, and it was woman who came down from the heavens, okay, and created with man. So these creation stories talk about woman coming down as the creator, and uh, uh, going through reproduction with the man here, but it was woman who came from the celestial bodies. And it's the Dracos are more of the nation that have been participating in the sinking and the cataclysms of Mu, as they have been here the longest, okay, trying to run experiments on our ancient ancestors for over 500,000 years. So just like that darkness is allowed to form in the shadow, right? It's allowed to take root in experimentation, and scientists and evil scientists are allowed to go down there and experiment and set off earthquakes to experiment with sciences and things like this. That's kind of what the Dracos have done, and were able to do. So I think what I'm trying to say is ultimately we must be really thankful to the Nagas, for they are really the only celestial component that's actually fighting against the massacres, pushing back against the Holocaust, pushing back and protecting Uluru through the Pleiadians, pushing back and protecting the sacred crystal grid networks, okay, keeping things pure, okay, pushing back the experiments of the Dracos versus trying to live harmoniously or subservient to them. Think about why the Hydras have been demonized throughout history, okay? If you go to Lisa Renee's site, ascensionglossary.com, she talks in a lot of extensive detail about the Lemurian Holocaust, how it's the first major event of genocide. Memories for over 500,000 years ago, Anunnaki patriarchy Melchizedeks allow Orion Draco invasion, underground and secret deception, Draco tunnels between Lemuria and Atlantis. Humans found out and tried to steal off underground tunnels with cataclysmic result. Massacres in Kauai later, 22,000 years ago, kill off the matriarchy influence. So she goes into a great deal about this, and I recommend reading it, and how there was a great relocation to Egypt. Egypt itself was Lemurian technology. The pyramids themselves was Lemurian technology. Egypt came later, from the Mayans. So all of this was came forth from Lemuria. Says here, relocation to Egypt, ET technology taken to Egypt 35,000 to 45,000 years ago. Cultures were rebuilt with ET support and interstellar communication. Sphinx was built to house the Hall of Records and marks the inner Earth gate hold base of 5D frequency. Pyramids were built to pull in high frequency from Sirius and for other teleportation and Melchizedek ascension host. Again, this was taken over and supported more by those patriarchy systems. The factions fled to join the Anunnaki resistance building in the new colony Atlantis in the UK. Pyramid technology used for ascension or in power conflict with Anunnaki resistance. Okay, and it goes into, now getting into what happened in Atlantis, which is, way after the things that I'm talking about here, but essentially it's all relative, right? Now, these Nicole Tablets, okay, these tablets of the Nicole start by saying, the universe was only a soul or a spirit. Everything was calm, silent, and soundless. The void and dark was their immensity of space. Only the Supreme Spirit existed, the great self-existing power, the creator, the seven-headed serpent moved from the abyss of darkness. This is the manner of creation of the earth. The seven-headed superlative intellects of the seven-headed serpents gave commands. These are paralleling our creation stories from the Bible. And also the original stories of Genesis were actually taken from the motherland of Mu, taken from the Necal Tablets, which ultimately honored the serpent as the creator. And here is where they demonized this, okay? But originally, the motherlands of Mu worshiped the serpent as the creator. From the primordial darkness or the void, okay? The access point into the antiparticle realms, okay? And from the pre-matter realms. This serpent creator story is also in Gnostic scripture as well, but then again, here it twists the story to demonize the serpent. So I just want to ask you guys, why do you think the beloved rainbow serpent echoes tradition in the AU grids? Okay. It's because it's at the core, it's at the heart, and they know it. Every single Lemurian will feel this deep down. And through the Stargate systems on Earth and in the conscious crystal grid networks in Earth, this serpent tradition echoes through these crystal grids. We have to understand that what has gone down between Lemuria and Atlantis, I'm going to go back to this. These are prime creator wars. These are God wars and control wars over the hearts of humanity. And it is the basis of the Armageddon. And again, Armageddon is kind of summing up. It's a word for summing up all of the dark technologies that control humanity. So the original creation and language of the motherland Mu was serpent, was Hydra. This is important because the star nations in which we have surpassed, denied, demonized, hijacked through Anunnaki Draco hybrids and archons. Okay, the archons working for them, the galactic handlers, our Saturnian matrix systems, these have slayed at the head of our original progenitors that gave us the original wisdom quoted in our biblical scripture today. Even now, many are saying, you know, as I've gone on and done some shows, they're saying, oh, we're slaying the head of Hydra in Australia, right? Okay, so you're saying the head of your progenitors, you're slaying the head of your progenitors, you're slaying the mother celestial races of our beloved Pleiadians, you're slaying the ones we seek to hold true as guardians to protect our sacred conscious crystal grid networks of this earth. These are to be slayed in AU. It's not the Hydra that's coming to a head. The Hydra is a part of the guardian protectors, and they really come from the seraphim that are guardians that are closest to the thrones of God and in the spiritual realms. They have then tricked humanity to kill that in which gave them their solar feminine Christ, the God feminine technology. Did you know that the Lemurians worshipped the Southern Cross in the sky, the Crux constellation? So the Lemurians worshipped the Crux constellation here. It is a part of Alpha Centauri. And Hydra actually comes from, in terms of universal matrix systems and progenitor galaxy nations, comes from the Laniakea systems and the Hydra Centaurus super colossal cluster. Okay, and the crux is what the Lemurians worshipped. It is what represents the T symbol. So there's actually a hieroglyph that's in the book of Necal's. It looks, you know, kind of like this, which isn't a very good portrayal of this symbol, but oops. Anyways, it looks like this. I couldn't find a very good picture of it, but they worshipped this T symbol. This was a part of the Naga hieroglyphs. And essentially, the crux, it's really actually oppositional to the constellation of Cassiopeia, which I find very, very interesting, that we talk about Cassiopeian wars that were a part of the sinking of Mu. The ones in which the demise of Mu was fought in the Great War of Cassiopeia, this, like I said, all prior to even any thought of the Orions. But the crux, this symbolism of the crux, this actually belongs to the Hercules family, which highlights the progenitor, celestial progenitor nations, okay, which is Aquila, Alpha Centaurus, Corona, Crater, Corvus, Cygnus. Cygnus holds the oldest ancient indigo records on this earth. That's why it was revered by the Egyptians. Even more so than Orion when it came to immortality and eternal life. Hercules, Lyra. Okay, this is why Lyra is 12th dimensionally encoded, and why we can accept this facet of idealism that Lyra was the origin of humanity. Okay, no. It only just begun there. We're going back before this time. Serpents and Vulpecula, and also Hydra. Hydra is a part of this family. This family are the true celestial progenitors to this earth. Okay, Crux is also represented in the Australian flag. Okay, why do you think that is? Okay, they want you to believe that it's the Pleiadians. Okay, even if you think this is the Pleiadians, that's fine. It's just we're going a little bit deeper. Okay, Crux goes deeper and takes you into Australia's Lemurian heritage, but so does Pleiades. They both do. You could see this as Pleiades, you could see this as Crux, but it is on the Australian flag. It also represents justice. So if you look at this picture here, it also represents the scales of justice, which I feel is very much what's playing out right now. What this means here is really the battle here that is trying to balance the scales. And that's the transformation that Australia is going through right now, and the rest of the world is going through right now. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my crystal grid network because I just want you guys to take a look at these locations. These would be all of the nodal points that anchor in the organic crystal grid. The Pleiadians created this crystal grid off the radial signature guidance of their progenitor mother race, Hydra, approximately 200,000 years ago. I know I'm going completely against, like I said, the narrative of galactic history by saying that Hydra is the primordial progenitor race of the Pleiadians, but I've been saying this for a very, very long time, a few years now. And the more that I know, the more that it solidifies this truth. Okay. And I don't just say this because I consider myself an ambassador to this nation or because I'm biased to it, which of course I'm biased to it. But when you really look at the primordial progenitor race Pleiadian markings in this earth, in the stargates, they do not deny this truth. Okay. If you go to places that emerge Arcturian stargate, like Titicaca, Peru, that, you know, manifests up the first and second dimensional stargate vortex sites on a global scale in the earth, you find serpent temples here. If you go to the Mayans with the Kukulkan, the plumed serpent of the feathered serpent, again here, hybridized serpent avian. All cultures of Mesoamerica, Lemurian civilizations honor this. The Quetzalcoatl in Aztec mythology, the Incans in Peru, Bolivia, serpent temples in Santiago de Ojai, I believe it's called. There's also the Incan serpent stone in Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is a Pleiadian activated stargate. Please tell me why they would be having serpent symbolism at a Pleiadian stargate. Okay, if this was not what they were honoring, if this was not their mother progenitor, Like, again, look at the Serpent Mounds, okay? This came from the Lemurians, the original earth builders. These civilizations all ran off an incipient Lemurian force from lunar to solar stargates. And they were all Pleiadian, Sirian, Arcturian, Andromedan, and Hydran encoded. Now, each one of these markings here that you see, these are all 24 crystal points. These are stargates that anchor in the purity of the Earth's celestial consciousness. Each one of these points hold the crystal consciousness seeds of the original Earth builders. They essentially here at each one of these stargate locations, okay, what they do is they put themselves in a quantum state all over the Earth's grids in various locations, okay, navigating by the ley lines, navigating by the organic crystal grids, and navigating by those gas lines that run through the ridges and mountain systems in the Earth. All of these geographical locations work in synchronization to other systems running currents from the horizontal, vertical, and angular ley line systems. Each one of these locations are also each holding time capsules that release in accordance to stellar gate alignments that sweep the global Earth grids and release information for individual humans, collective soul egregores, and also to the Earth's total consciousness body in the race morphogenetic field. Since 2012, these organic Earth stargates have opened and activated, releasing this information. This is what is allowing higher consciousness, invention, and human DNA evolution are these particular organic grids. These are the Earth's benevolent designs and what should be being used and tapped into for those that are holding the genetic imprint and crystalline design within them for global healing. So grid and gatekeepers, when you ask me, how do we do this? How do we do this healing work? Well, these are the locations you want to anchor into, okay? It's going to be Maui, Hawaii. It's Tibesti Mountains in Chad, Africa. Lake Titicaca, Mount Kailash in Tibet, the Yucatan Peninsula, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. I'm not going to highlight all of them. Okay, but I'll actually write all these down and put them in a list for you in the description so you can have all of these locations yourself. Glastonbury, Machu Picchu, okay, Mount Shasta. These are the organic crystal grids. Now, Uluru is one of the ancient modern day locations of Lemuria, and it's really getting highlighted because, like I said, what's going on right now and who are what is considered the Anangu people. So the Anangu people are the refugees from the original motherland of Mu, and the Anangu people are the traditional guardians of Uluru. And like I said, these Hydra Pleiadians are the ones pushing back against these forces, okay? These are the ones working with the purity of the 24th strand of the DNA, and they have been guarding Uluru here for over 40,000 years. Understanding these people will assist us in understanding the unique way in life of Lemuria, but also in ways in how we can assist the organic crystalline grid and how to do this work, right? You know, using the dream time to do this work, okay, which is said that can't actually be used unless you're a direct bloodline descendant of this. But really, the truth is that anyone can kind of do this work if they feel that they were an incarnate from the land of Mu, from the original motherland. That's all it really takes to activate and awaken this grid keeper consciousness and this grid keeper desire to assist the earth and assist humanity and anchor in these higher humanity codes into the earth grids. Okay, guys, so yeah, it's a lot. I will continue to put updates out about this. I feel, again, like I said, it's an imperative thing for us to really understand the history of what has happened since Lemuria, since the motherland of Mu, and to understand who are the key players here in this earthly checkerboard of information, and to acknowledge and to rectify the traumas and the wounds, because everything that happened in Lemuria is what has fragmented our consciousness now here in this time. This is why we have polarity. This is why we have gender splitting and gender distortions and distorted gender roles. This is why we don't have fifth dimensional incarnates seeding into the earth grids. Okay, if we can't continue to incarnate the race from Mu or incarnate fifth dimensional souls into this earth, then we will continue to just be a dying breed. Also, the forced breeding programs where Lemurians were enslaved to procreate with reptilians. We have to be able to see this in ourselves. We have to be able to see where in our own lives we were a part of these programs, so we can stop the continuation of these traumas into our daughters and into our children and into our sons. We have to be able to identify the sterilization programs that are happening, right? If we can't see the darkness and the corruption, then we will continue to be victims of these programs. And so again, the light is shining on Australia because they hold the landmass encoding to some of the greatest defeats of that nuclear desecration of the feminine God technology and the Hydra and Pleiadian systems that are here to actually guard and protect these energies and these things like this. So like I said, I will be doing more updates on this. I think that it's definitely worth diving in. What I'm speaking of today is at the heart and soul, in the core of the essence of everything that I am, and everything truly that I believe in. And it's imperative that we get this information out. Those of you who are grid and gatekeepers, please check these locations. These would be locations that you want to draw empowerment from, protect the Earth's crystal grids, but also tune in. You can do this by utilizing geometric technologies, geometric inductions, and you can utilize these locations by accessing this through your universe, through your pillar of light, and running geometric symbolisms that's most encoded to that land or to that stargate through a topographical viewpoint where you send that geometric encoding from your pillar of light to the stargate itself, okay? And you use them as anchors to draw up ultimately the energy from Mu that's coming through gas currents and crystal currents from the ring of fire. All of these points on the geographical location are going to allow you to access that energy. Okay. And then that's energy that you can take and use when you're dismantling the dark grids. Okay. When you're dismantling the implants, when you're dismantling the rings of Saturn, when you're dismantling all of the corruption, mind control programs, etc. You want to draw your power from these locations. So that's why I wanted to give them to you today. And yeah, guys, I love you all so much, and I hope you have a beautiful everything. Namaste.